Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. As the sole plenary of the Nuclear Suppliers Group discusses India's application after the Indian Prime Minister met the Chinese President in Tashkent this afternoon to win his support, we ask three critical questions. Is NSG membership essential for India or a mistaken quest? What are the chances of success and what will be the consequences of failure? Tonight we present a special BJP versus Congress debate. My guests are a senior member of the BJP's National Executive and one of its experts in foreign policy, Seshadri Chari, and Congress's former Foreign Minister, Salman Khurshid. Gentlemen, I very much want to talk about that critical meeting this afternoon between the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President in Tashkent, as well as about the NSG plenary that's still taking place as we talk in Seoul. But first, let me start with a basic fundamental question for audiences who don't know why the NSG is important and why it's critical for India to join the NSG. Mr. Chari, why do you believe it's important for India to join the NSG?
You know, we have been a very responsible nuclear country. So, the entry into NSG is actually a vindication of our principled stand, and also the responsible manner in which we have discharged our obligations as far as the nuclear liability is concerned. So our responsibility does not end with only like behaving like a good boy, but also being part of the mechanism that determines the rules of the game. So we are not here to just follow the rules of the game, but also make the rules of the game and also see to it that the world slowly progresses towards a stronger regime.
Can I put to you a point that's made by many? After India got a waiver in 2008, people say nothing much additionally will be gained by joining the NSG. The waiver in 2008 gave you everything you wanted. Therefore, today, we're making an awful lot of effort for marginal or minimal gain. How do you respond to that?
No, it's not a marginal or minimal gain, but the 2008 waiver was a very, very important and strategic step towards getting a full membership of NSG. But it has opened a number of doors, but there are yet a number of other smaller and bigger windows that are to be opened.
So this is a critical next step.
This is a very critical next step.
Salman Khurshid, there is an opposite view to the one you've just heard from Seshadri Chari. It's expressed by senior diplomats like Satyabrat Pal. He says that this is a manic quest and this bid to join the NSG is misplaced. Do you agree with that view?
Well, it really depends on what is the basis for his having said that. I respect his views. I think he's an outstanding diplomat. I think it's not to do with the content of getting admission to NSG, but it's to do with the process. That he perhaps thinks that the process would extract a price from us if we continue doing it in the manner that we are doing it. Of course, I think nobody would say that we don't need to get to the NSG, but what do you sacrifice on the way to getting NSG, I think is significant and important.
Let me put to you a point that was made somewhat obliquely by Mr. Chari. It's made more openly by others who advocate that membership of the NSG is essential. They say that the 2008 waiver committed India to accepting all future changes and alterations in NSG rules. Now, if we aren't part of the NSG, we'll be accepting changes and rules that other people are making. But once we are part of the NSG, we'll be able to influence those changes, and that is clearly in India's interest, and therefore, joining the NSG is critical.
Oh, I think there's no difference on that. I mean, that's very clear that we are equally committed to joining the NSG, and the clear advantage of being in the NSG is writ large. There's no issue about that at all. But there is obviously there are steps to be taken, and in taking those steps, what do we show ourselves to the world to be, I think is important. I don't think that it's a great idea to pitch very high and lose at this stage. We need to probably do better work. We should have understood China a lot better. we should have got China on board, not expected other countries necessarily to get China on board. And there are a lot of issues with China that would, in a sense, be relevant to getting China to get on board as far as this is concerned.
I'll come to China in a moment's time, Mr. Chari, but I want to pick up first a point that Salman made right at the beginning, where he said the debate is not whether we should or shouldn't be in the NSG. The real debate is how we do it and what price we pay. Now, one concern is that the way we're doing it is actually going to end up equating India with Pakistan. The waiver had dehyphenated the two countries, but now with Pakistan applying to join, as India has applied to join, that hyphen has been inserted back. And therefore, the cost of rehyphenating is a cost that we shouldn't have had to pay, yet we're paying it.
No, of course the waiver did dehyphenate India and Pakistan, and even at that time Pakistan had protested. But surprisingly, China also took a very different stand, but at the last moment they gave in. So we should remember that China's objection is not actually including India and excluding Pakistan. And whatever support they are extending to Pakistan also is not for the love of Pakistan that they have. They know the realities of the situation as far as Pakistan is concerned.
But can I interrupt? Hasn't the way we've gone about application this time around reintroduced a hyphen that 2008 had removed?
No, it is the other way around. On the other hand, China is conscious of the fact that the world has come to think that by allowing India, actually India and China are getting hyphenated, and that is what is probably irritating China the most.
Well, let me put that to Salman, because it's an intriguing, perhaps even a unique interpretation. What you've heard is that it's not, first of all, India that's reintroduced the hyphenation between India and Pakistan. China did. And the fact that China was going to treat India and Pakistan on par is not something we could have done anything about. It was inevitable. And secondly, if there is a hyphen being introduced this time, it's between India and China, and that may be to our advantage. How do you answer that twin question, Salman Khurshid?
Well, the second one first. I think this is really an argument of desperation to say that India, China are getting hyphenated in this. I don't accept that, and I can understand that some plausible explanation has to be given for our being unable to get this thing achieved right now. As far as Pakistan is concerned, China has, if you like, a strategic ploy in Pakistan. They need to play up Pakistan because they have nothing else going against India today. That's all they have, and therefore we must understand this. We mustn't just simply brush it off and think that this is something of the past. This is squarely there in front of us, and we need to tackle it. We need to be able to get past it, and we need to resolve it. And China is not an easy country to handle. China is a difficult country to handle, and we'll have to spend more time on China.
Before I focus on China, do you accept the argument, Salman Khurshid, made by Satyabrat Pal, that the way India has gone about applying to join the NSG this time round has reintroduced that hyphen with Pakistan, which the 2008 waiver had removed, and therefore the way we're going about applying for membership is detrimental to our interests? Do you accept that argument? Because you did sound as if you were accepting it when you first began. I'm not sure now.
Well, yeah, in a sense, yes. But I think that's not so important, because this is not a hyphen that's been put across the board and everything. This is a hyphen that's come, unfortunately, as far as NSG is concerned. But bad enough. I mean, for a hyphen in between India and Pakistan anywhere is bad enough. I think it's what our standing remains in the world when we try and pitch ourselves in this manner, and then we seem to fail to succeed because there are issues relating to Pakistan. There's no other issue. There is absolutely no other issue. We are responsible. Our record is blemishless, etc. Then why is this staring in our face?
Let's then, gentlemen, come at this point to the meeting that the Prime Minister had today with the Chinese President in Tashkent, and see what impact that's going to have on India's hope and ambition to join the NSG. Now, Mr. Chari, we know three things about that meeting. First of all, that the vast majority of the meeting was actually on the Prime Minister making a case for Chinese support for Indian membership of the NSG. The second thing we know is that the Prime Minister called upon President Xi Jinping to make a fair and objective assessment and to judge India's application on its merit. And then he added, please join the consensus that's developing at Seoul. But we have no idea of the Chinese response. And I'm told it was a 40-minute meeting. And if at the end of the 40-minute meeting, the Indian spokesman can't give you any idea of what the Chinese response was, then it seems to me as if it may not have been a very hopeful or encouraging response. What's your sense of the silence about the Chinese response?
You know, as Mr. Salman Khurshid said, China is not a very comfortable country to deal with, no doubt about it. And then there are a lot of body language and this and that and so many things that go into it. But if you know, this is actually the Prime Minister's meeting is a follow-up of Honorable President of India, Pranab Mukherjee's visit to China.
And the Foreign Secretary
and
after
also
that.
the Foreign Secretary after that. So it has been a continuous engagement. And during the President's visit, he spoke about engagement, and he spoke about cooperative engagement with China, and Chinese leadership came on board as far as a number of issues were concerned. So this was taken further by the Foreign Secretary, and then the way has been paved now. So I think by the time all these things settles in, the Chinese will come around.
Can I ask you this? You say the Chinese...
This happened in 2008
okay,
also.
Can I stop? You say the Chinese will come around. The critical question is, will they come around in time for India to be admitted to the NSG at Seoul, that is to say in the next 24 hours? Or do you think that's unlikely?
No, I think by the way things are going, I think the Chinese will finally, at the last moment probably, they will come around.
That means they could come around in the next 24 hours?
Absolutely, I think so, I think so. I mean, these are all, I mean, nobody can predict, nobody is going to look into the
that's your feeling.
ball.
But that's your hunch and feeling.
No, it's a logical conclusion also.
All right, that's much stronger than hunch and feeling, a logical conclusion. Salman Khurshid, even in 2008 when we got that waiver under Dr. The Chinese continued to object literally to the last moment. Now this time round, surely Beijing wouldn't want to damage its improving relationship with India if it turns out, and I admit there's a big if there, if it turns out that China is the only obstacle and the rest of the NSG is willing to admit India. And that in a sense is what Mr. Chari means, that he has a hunch and it's a logical conclusion to say that China won't be the obstacle at the end.
Well, I can only join Mr. Seshadri Chari in hoping and praying that this comes through. We would be the happiest, and I think everyone would be happy about it. Unfortunately, China is not the only country. There are other countries as well, but they may fall in line if China does. So perhaps China is the main stumbling block. I believe that this is something to do with our relationship with China that is in a sense our understanding is flawed. We have really expected too much too soon in our relationship with China, and just the optics of you know, friendly handshakes and so on is not enough with a country like China. There's a lot more hard work to do, and you've got to get much below the surface before you can expect to call it a good relationship.
So you're saying that India's counting its chickens before the eggs have hatched as far as China's concerned. We need to sit on those eggs a lot longer.
Fair enough.
Let me give you one reason
Fair enough,
why.
I think, but that's probably true about any egg.
Let me give you, Mr. Chari, one reason why your optimism about China coming around and possibly in the next 24 hours may be misplaced. This time round, China's objection is much more complicated than it was in 2008 for two reasons. Firstly, China has gone public with its opposition. In 2008, it didn't. Yeah. Secondly, Pakistan has entered the picture. Pakistan has applied for membership of the NSG as well. In 2008, there was no question of anyone granting Pakistan a waiver alongside India. For both those reasons, the Chinese nut may be a lot more difficult to crack in 2016 than it was 8 years earlier.
No, there are three things here. One, we have made it very clear to even China and to the rest of the world that NSG membership is not a conditional membership and it is always a unanimous decision. So if they admit, if on the insistence of China, and mind you, China is not insisting that Pakistan also should be made. They know the realities of the situation. Pakistan does not have a no first use.
No, I think China
Pakistan
is insisting without saying
Pakistan
so. Without
has
saying
so,
China
without
is,
saying so.
Yes,
so
without saying
so, they are doing it. If they had real objections about all these things, so China is probably introducing the element of Pakistan only from a very strategic point of view that they think they are going to get from Pakistan, but they know the realities of the situation. They may not ultimately
so you're
be
saying
as
China
serious
is
about
only
it.
using Pakistan for tactical
Absolutely.
purposes?
I think that is what they are doing, and they have understood, and we have also understood, and we have convinced China enough. And don't forget, closely on the lines of this, we are also participating in the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and that's another forum where we are dealing with China on board.
But the point
Therefore,
is,
there are
where do you get this
greater
confidence?
engagements.
No, where do you get this confidence that at the last moment China may give up its tactical support of Pakistan at the NSG and clear the way for India? Because that's what you're saying.
That is because of the principled stand that India has taken, and also the tactical differences that China may see by getting isolated as far as standing on this particular issue of hyphenating Pakistan and India is concerned.
Salman Khurshid, let me put you an argument that hasn't quite been made by Mr. Chari, but it is an argument that many analysts are making in public. China, no doubt, wants to support Pakistan, but equally China also knows that Pakistan, unlike India, simply isn't ready to join the NSG today. First of all, Pakistan hasn't separated its civilian and military facilities. Secondly, it hasn't signed the additional protocol. India has done both of those. So is it possible that China might agree to a sequential arrangement, open the door to India now, whilst at the same time ensuring the door remains open for Pakistan whenever Pakistan is ready? And that, by the way, was one of the assurances Secretary of State Kerry gave the NSG, that India wouldn't, if admitted to the NSG, stand in the way of Pakistan's entry later on. Do you think that sort of sequential arrangement is something you could persuade China to accept, or is even that one step too far at the moment?
Not quite sure. Not quite sure. You can't read the Chinese mind that carefully. But from our point of view, I think it seems a little disconcerting that we should be party to Pakistan getting membership under whatever conditions in the future. I think if it's coming from us as a concession to get our membership now, I'm not quite sure that we are doing ourselves a great service.
In other words, you're saying even a sequential arrangement whereby India gets in and then doesn't block Pakistan's entry and the door remains open for Pakistan whenever Pakistan is ready, would not be in India's interest. And I ask that question because effectively that is what Sushma Swaraj at her press conference indicated is India's position.
Yes, I certainly think, and I said that this is not becoming of India, and I think it's not deserved by India, that somebody should persuade us that we have to accept this condition.
And it's not just Sushma Swaraj.
You can't control everything in the world indefinitely.
It's not just Sushma Swaraj at her press conference who indicated that this would be or is India's position. Senator Kerry, in the letter that he wrote to Secretary of State to the 47 other members of the NSG, actually spelled this out in so many words, that he'd gotten assurance from India that once admitted, India would not use extraneous subcontinental or regional issues to block the entry of other members. And that was clearly an assurance we'd given Kerry, because he wouldn't have reflected it in his letter otherwise. You're saying all of that is a series of tactical or even strategic mistakes made by this government?
I'm afraid yes, because I do think, and this is where we started this discussion at the beginning of the program, that what is the price we are paying for something that's extremely important. We agree it's very significant and important, but should it come at a price as high as this? It's not simply an issue of keeping Pakistan out. It is also a matter of how we deal with the world, and are we going to accept in everywhere in the world, something that we find unacceptable from Pakistan, and we'll accept it only because somebody in the world is trying to persuade us to do so.
How do you answer that question, that this is an unacceptable price for India to have to pay, to acknowledge publicly that we won't block Pakistan's entry if we are admitted to the NSG?
No, we have not given any assurance to anybody saying that we will not block Pakistan's
Well,
entry.
Secretary of State Kerry said so in his letter, and he wouldn't have said it without an assurance. And Sushma Swaraj at her press conference made it clear.
No, we have never said that once we are into the membership, we will not block Pakistan. We have never said that. Be very clear about it. But what we've
certainly given the impression we won't. Now you're saying that impression is deceptive.
There are certain conditions that Pakistan has to fulfill. It is for the NSG plus India as a member in it to take a collective decision on that. If that body at a later stage takes a collective decision that Pakistan qualifies, obviously we will have to go along with the NSG.
Let me stop and ask you,
But
would the sequential arrangement that I put to Salman Khurshid, and he said would not be acceptable to him, would it be acceptable to you? That India is let in, the door is kept open for Pakistan whenever Pakistan is ready to join. Would that sequencing be acceptable?
The door being kept open is not Pakistan specific. It's specific for any country that wants to get entry into NSG, as long as they fulfill the conditionalities that has been decided.
All right.
And we want to be a member of it in order to strengthen those conditionalities on the other hand.
Let me now put something else to you, and I'll go to Salman in a moment's time. Up till now, we're having this discussion in the belief that the principal country blocking India is China. And that was clearly the impression until this late night meeting of the NSG began post 9 p.m. Seoul time this evening. And that meeting, by the way, continues after a break. The second half of the meeting has begun. But now we're hearing that there are other countries that are blocking India. Brazil, a BRICS partner, has made it clear that they have reservations about India joining. It's become clear that Austria, New Zealand and Turkey still have objections. We haven't won them over. But the new addition is Brazil. What do you make of that? Because now it's not just China alone, there's a substantial number of countries that are also opposed to India's entry.
No, I won't say there are a substantial number, but yes, they are important countries, no doubt about it. And we are tackling that issue at that level also. We have been approaching these people, and it's an ongoing process. And this process is continuing. So I don't see a very major problem as far as these countries are concerned.
What about the fact that
Russia and France, on the other hand, have come on board?
But Russia and France have always been on board. They weren't ever off board. Brazil, a BRICS partner, we thought was supporting us. Now they've made it clear this evening, if the leaks, and I admit these are leaks, are true, does it worry you that a BRICS partner is opposed to us? And that, by the way, if you add South Africa, that's the second BRICS partner.
True. I mean, it's not that we should be very comfortable about this, but of course, these things are being handled, and we do not know the real facts behind all these leaks also. So we will look into it. And there is a team that is already looking into all these things.
Salman Khurshid, in 2008, what made the big difference was a phone call from President George Bush to the then Chinese President Hu Jintao, and the Chinese fell in line. This time round, although America has repeatedly, from its press conferences by the State Department and the White House, made it clear they support India, but we've only had a letter sent to the NSG by Secretary of State Kerry. We don't know whether Obama has made the effort that Bush made in 2008. Does that worry you, that perhaps Obama hasn't given the same level of support? Or would you say, look, the relationship between America and China has changed considerably in the last 8 years, and even if Obama had made that extra effort, it might not have worked the way it did in 2008? Which of the two is your position?
Well, I think it could be any of these, frankly. It may also have something to do with President Obama's style of functioning, of the personal relationship between Dr. Manmohan Singh and President Bush. Although we are told that there is an outstanding and a very warm relationship between President Obama and our Prime Minister, it's these little things that will tell you what is the quality of that relationship. And then, of course, China and the US, they have a relationship that's a little kamsi-kamsa from time to time. I think these are signals that you have to read in advance to be sure about how you're going to handle something. And I'm not really confident that all this has been done effectively.
Can I then ask you this? Do you think India made a high-profile bid for the NSG and somewhat misread the level and quantum of support it would get from America? That perhaps the signals, as you said, weren't read correctly. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm afraid as of now, given the lay of the land, this would be my prima facie position. The position, of course, would change depending on how the facts pan out and what we hear of the actual discussions that have happened. But right now, that's the preliminary prima facie picture that one can see.
Mr. Chari, what you heard from Salman Khurshid is that India overestimated the level of support it would get from President Obama, and he added that maybe we misread the signals we were getting from Washington and launched a very high-profile bid for the NSG without fully realizing that the level of support from Obama is not equivalent to the support Bush gave in 2008.
No, I don't think we misread the signals, and I don't also think that it is a high profile. I mean, it's a whatever profile had to be added to it, we have added. I mean, compare this with Dr. Manmohan Singh's bid for Indo-US nuclear deal. He put his own government at stake. That was the kind of engagement that Dr. Manmohan Singh carried forward, and that is the only reason why he could succeed in spite of terrific opposition, but not from China or Pakistan, but from internal opposition.
The thing is, Manmohan Singh pulled it off. You've taken a high-profile stand, but have you done it and misread Obama's level of support?
We have gone a step ahead, in fact. We have gone a step ahead, and therefore it's not the question of high profile. This is the due process that we have to go through, and we have gone through that process.
Mr. Chari, the Foreign Secretary, as well as India's most senior official on disarmament and nuclear issues, Amandeep Singh Gill, are in Seoul. Will this high-profile presence add to the chances of success, or could it make failure more embarrassing? And remember, the Foreign Secretary dashed there at the last moment.
I know. It was an important occasion for us. And I think we should do everything that is possible to make it a success. So I think we have been trying it for the last 5 to 6 years. And this government, I mean, it's not that this government has opened up this particular aspect. So it's a continuation of what has been going on. So if it did not succeed for the last 5 years, and if we are able to make it a success this time, it's going to be very good for our diplomatic outreach as far as the world is concerned.
Salman Khurshid, there's a point made there by Mr. Chari that I want to put to you, that by presenting the Foreign Secretary, by making sure that Amandeep Singh Gill is there, by making sure the Prime Minister took it up at such extensive lengths and detail with the Chinese President today, India is showing self-assurance, India is showing it's not scared of failure. In a sense, the timidity of the past, I don't mean the UPA government, but the timidity of the last 60 years has been outgrown. That is a message that sources have given to 2 newspapers yesterday. Do you believe that is true and a good way of characterizing this particular bid of the NSG?
Well, allow me to compliment them on sending their best hands. The fact that the Foreign Secretary is there who knows how to handle China and has been an ambassador in China, I think is a good choice, and Amandeep Singh Gill is a good choice. That's not the issue, that you put in your best assets and best hands to take care of this. I think it should always be like this. There should never be a half-hearted try. The issue is not that. The issue is the general perception that develops about, is India a success in the field of diplomacy, or India is still struggling to make its mark? I think that's what's happening in a very competitive world, and I don't think that we should end up in a situation where it appears that something that we really tried, desperately tried, and we didn't make it. If it was something that comes across as something that is work in progress, that we will get in due course, I think it has less damage.
You know, the point he's making is that because this has become such a high-profile bid, both in India, where front pages of newspapers and television channels are devoting all their time and space to it, but even internationally, the cost of failure means that the world will say India still hasn't got to a position where it makes an all-out effort and succeeds. India is still at that precarious point where an all-out effort leads to failure, or at least disappointment. And that was a misjudgment. If it hadn't been such a high-profile bid, this outcome wouldn't have led to that misjudgment.
No, look at it the other way around. If we had not succeeded and we had not made it high profile and we had not succeeded, even then the same criticism applies. Oh, you should have made it high profile. Why could not your prime minister gone? Your foreign minister should have gone. You should have put every person available on the job to be there. What otherwise? I mean,
so you're damned if you do and you are damned if you don't.
So this cannot be, this cannot be seen from the point of view of high profile. I mean, we are living in a high profile world, media wise, and so many other things are happening in this world. So everything is high profile to some extent, but that does not mean we should lag behind as far as our efforts are concerned, and that is exactly what we are doing now.
And if those efforts then lead to disappointment, it doesn't matter. The effort is what counts.
One. And then as far as setbacks are concerned, I think in diplomacy there is always a step forward and a step backward. So I don't think we should worry about the results. We should do our performance to the best of our capability and ability and situation is concerned.
Salman Khurshid, let me put this to you. It's becoming to some analysts increasingly likely that instead of an outright admission of India at Seoul or an outright no and rejection, what might happen is that the NSG might set up a panel to look into the criteria for admitting non-NPT countries, a criteria that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, maybe a little longer, maybe a full year, would eventually admit India. In other words, that process might start, but the outcome won't happen for another 6 months or a year. Would the starting of the process by setting up this panel be welcomed by you? Would you see that as an achievement? Or would you say, no, panels are actually a bad idea because who knows how they'll end up?
Well, I mean, it could work. It could work in our advantage. It could not work in our advantage. But that's part of the process. It'll be work in progress. That will be a good thing. There's been work in progress all this while, and this would be another step. And I think that one can't but welcome it. But it also means that we've postponed something that should have happened now. We postponed that for some time to come. Now, as far as Shashadri Chari said something about you do this, you'll be damned, you do that, you're damned. Well, the answer really lies in uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. You wear the crown, and therefore you are answerable, and you will have to answer. We can sympathize with you, but frankly, the answer will remain yours.
You know, the problem, Mr. Chari, with the possible outcome that I suggested to Salman, that this matter could be referred to a panel, the panel will take 6 months or a year, the outcome will be known at the end of it, but the process has started. The problem with that proposal is that by then, President Obama will cease to have been president. Either Trump or Hillary Clinton will be the new president. This will not be a priority for them. We will not have the same level of support. And even if it's Hillary, she may not come around to the same level of support for 2, 3 more years. Therefore, if this matter is referred to a panel, that's actually bad news for India. The process may start, but the outcome looks less and less likely to be favorable.
No, I don't know whether this kind of a procedure is possible as far as this NSG's decision-making process is concerned. The administrative mechanism probably as of now does not allow this kind of a mechanism, but they can any day take such a situation and a decision to form some sort of a committee which will go into these details. And of course, they are seized of this. One of the objections that China has raised is about non-NPT countries also, no doubt about it. But as the situation in the US changes, we should to be very optimistic. Probably the situation would change for better also. The new incumbent may probably take up this issue even more vehemently than probably President Obama could have done or has done so far. A. And
isn't
B,
that a case of hoping against hope?
No, it's in diplomacy you live only through hopes and then you go from step by step. So there is nothing wrong in hoping against hope, and then sometimes you hope for the best and it happens. And moreover, our engagement with all other countries have also gone a notch up. in these last 2-3 years. So the obligations that we have as far as the other countries are concerned are also, it's a work in progress. So I think probably a time may come after 6 months, more and more countries would probably join hands with us on this particular issue.
Although at the moment this evening, new people like Brazil are objecting to us, you're hoping that the opposite will be the outcome after 6 months.
It's quite possible that these things would change in the next 6 months, because you do not know what other changes are going to take place in the geopolitical situation.
I'm going to end, gentlemen, by putting the same question but in different ways to both of you. We don't know what the outcome will be of this particular plenary meeting, because even after tonight's late night discussions that are still on, there is tomorrow's session. The matter could still be referred to tomorrow. The outcome may not be known, Salman Khurshid, till Friday afternoon or evening. If in the end India is admitted, it would be as much of a surprise now as it was to many in 2008. It was climactic then, it would be equally climactic now. But if it happened, would you accept that this is a significant victory for Mr. Modi, that he was bold, he took a risk, but it was the right risk to take and he pulled it off? If he pulls it off, will you give him that credit?
Well, obviously this is something that is not a partisan matter. This is something in which the whole country has a very clear vision and support. And if he succeeds, good for him. Better him than someone else.
Can
better
I
now
interrupt?
than some other time.
I've just been told, Salman Khurshid, that the meeting for this evening, or rather for tonight, has ended. It will continue tomorrow. The question of India or other non-NPT countries' memberships will be continued, discussed tomorrow. We don't know what the outcome is. So there's still hope. There's still hope. And I repeat, if Mr. Modi at the end of tomorrow pulls it off, will you give him that credit?
I said so, absolutely. Why should I not give credit to something that is in the national interest in a major sort of way? And it will give us, I believe, a much higher standing in the world. And so if he does pull it off, wonderful, outstanding. But if he doesn't pull it off, well, he must then accept that there are failures and successes in life, and that you have to accept them both.
If he doesn't pull it off, will you then turn around and say this was an unnecessary risk, it was a wild gamble, and it wasn't worth it, and he shouldn't have done it?
I think calling it a wild gamble would be unfair and would be an exaggeration. I would say that some of this diplomatic movements should have been less publicized, less in a public profile, because that's the first rule of diplomacy, that many things are supposed to be kept behind the curtain, and then you come and take a curtain call when everything works out for you.
At the moment, as we speak, we have live footage coming from Seoul. That meeting is over. You can see the NSG delegates walking out. ANI was trying to talk to one or two of them, but as you can see, they are refusing to talk. They're keeping their silence, but they're also keeping a mystery about what will be the outcome of India's application. Let me put the opposite question to you, Mr. Chari, and then we'll have to end this show. If at the end of tomorrow, India is not admitted, and we get a straight no, and that looks like a possibility, because remember, it only takes one country to object, and we get a no. What would you say to people who say this was an unnecessary risk? Secondly, it was misjudgment to build it up to such a high profile. And thirdly, making the Prime Minister so directly and immediately involved was also wrong, because it makes him look embarrassed.
No, the Prime Minister is the head of the team. Therefore, like Atal Bihari Vajpayee or Mr. Narasimha Rao or Dr. Manmohan Singh, this Prime Minister is also leading the country from the front. So you cannot say that the Prime Minister shouldn't have gone there and he shouldn't have done this, number one. Number two, by making it a high profile thing, we have made an announcement that we have put everything on stake, just as I said earlier about the Indo-US nuclear deal. Everything was on stake, including his own Prime Ministership. So I think this is one step below that in any case. So I think even there your contention doesn't hold water. But as far as getting a membership or not getting a membership is concerned, I think these trials will have to go ahead, and we will have to probably fine tune our approach next time and again do it.
So your position is nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't try, you'll never succeed.
So we will succeed. And then, I mean, there is no question of, it's not the question of setback, but a little bit of retreat, yes. But if there is retreat, I think a good general knows when to retreat.
We know clearly, Salman Khurshid, that if he succeeds, this will be a huge feather in Mr. Modi's cap. If he doesn't succeed, will this be an issue that your party will repeatedly bring up? Will you seek to embarrass him politically from your various platforms and in Parliament as well?
I am not sure that that would be the right thing for us to do. We would obviously, in taking stock of what's happened with diplomacy, we would obviously bring this issue up, but this is a matter of national pride and national interest, and I'm not quite sure that embarrassing the Prime Minister in this would necessarily be an advisable thing. But it's important, accounting for what our diplomatic efforts have done or have failed to do is an accounting that has to be done in front of the country.
What about that last point? Accounting in front of the country has to be done, but we won't embarrass the Prime Minister.
I fully agree with Salman on this issue also, in fact, like many other issues. I think, yes, I'm sure the Prime Minister will come and tell the whole country that what has happened, and I'm sure the country will understand that we have done our best and we are yet to do our best.
Gentlemen, I want to end by pointing out that both of you seem to be assuming that the outcome tomorrow will be unfavorable to India. It is still possible, maybe not probable, but it is still possible that we could get admitted and Mr. Modi might have a huge feather in his cap. Let's not leave out that possibility entirely, even if it looks somewhat unlikely this evening. My thanks to both my guests for joining me, and if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye, good night.